That's right, Chris. Right behind me, you can actually see federal agents staged, and there's even more in the back of this ICE office. That's because this is where that deadly shooting took place, where one detainee was killed and two others critically injured.
Just before dawn Wednesday, what started off as a police response to an officer assist quickly changed.
Just be advised, it's still active shooter. There's a sniper on the roof. Have everybody stay for very far locations.
Dallas police say a gunman opened fire at the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Office just off North Stemmons Freeway, I-35E.
It was very dark.
This man, who did not want to be identified, says he lives in this building right across the freeway. He says after hearing two shots, he ran out on the balcony.
He would shoot, he would wait 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds, he would shoot.
According to a statement from ICE officials, the shooter fired at the building, including at a transport van in the Sallyport. They say 3 detainees who were inside the van were shot. DPD Chief Daniel Como.
The DPD was able to locate the shooter, who was deceased. We're going to be working this investigation shoulder to shoulder with our federal partners.
ICE officials say the shooter died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Dallas FBI field office tells us they found shell casings near the suspected shooter with the phrase anti-ICE engraved on it.
There will be no resource not utilized to bring all those individuals who are responsible to bring them to justice and to hold them accountable.
I can imagine that was terrifying.
Authorities tell us no law enforcement members were injured in this shooting, and as they continue their investigation, Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson turns focus to the victims and their families.
Please join me in praying for the families of the folks who lost their lives today.
And we're still working to learn more about the detainee who was killed and the 2 others who were injured, as well as the suspect, 29-year-old Joshua John. But for now, we'll send it over to our Jason Wheeler, who's taking a look at just how did the shooter get access to this point.
Yeah, Brittany, thank you for that. I want to start us off here on the map with the wide view. This is downtown Dallas that you're seeing over here. And we'll go first to Dallas Love Field because I think a lot of us know where that is, and it's a good starting point just to give you your bearings. About 1.6 miles southwest of Dallas Love Field is that ICE facility that we are talking about where that shooting took place earlier today. And I want to draw your attention to this building, these law offices directly behind that ICE facility. This is where officers say those shots were fired from today. And I want to just give you this vantage point here of what this would look like for someone who is up on top of this building. As you can see, they had just a wide open view of this ICE facility. And again, this was just after we had seen the first light of day. So this parking lot would have lights in it and so forth. This person would have been probably very hard for anyone to have seen on top of that building there. Let's go and give you sort of this overhead view here. This is how the shots would have been fired, just straight across this parking lot. Zero obstructions here getting in the way. This is a pretty good distance, though, that we're talking about here, estimated by the maps at about 500 feet. But of course, those bullets finding their intended targets at the end of this parking lot here. Want to bring your attention to this as well, just because this is called Track Reports. This was started by Syracuse University many years ago, where they sort of put together this ICE detention capacity and activity. And as you can see, Texas has become a real hotbed for ICE activity and detention centers. And this doesn't even include the largest one in Fort Bliss that will accommodate up to 5,000 detainees. It just opened a couple of months ago. And then this, they say that Texas has the most ICE detainees. This is as of September of this year, so very recent. They list Texas with 13,000 detainees right now, almost as much as the next 3 states combined. So for anyone who might have been interested, Chris and Izzy and Rebecca, in targeting either ICE agents or detainees, Texas is a very target-rich environment for that.
And we'll get to that in a moment. But as our senior political reporter, our senior crime and justice reporter, your areas of expertise are merging in a troubling way.
Yeah, Rebecca, I mean, without divulging your specific sources, but How did you first get word that this had taken place, and what have you learned in the hours since?
Well, so I got a text message from a source early on this morning saying you need to get out to the ICE facility. There have been multiple people shot. At the time, they thought that there might be snipers. They were very concerned. They couldn't get Dallas Fire Rescue into that area immediately to transport the victims because they didn't know, there were still shots being fired. And so they transported the victims, DPD, in their squad cars. And then we learned, obviously, that there was just one sniper. Dallas police actually used drones to go over the rooftops where they believe that there might be, where the shooter might be. And obviously they found the shooter with that self-inflicted gunshot wound. And so early on, I was told that there were 3 victims and that at least 1 or 2 of them had died. And obviously my source was pretty accurate on all that information. And again, a lot of concern for were there any law enforcement officers that were injured at that time, and now we know that there weren't. And my source early on said that it did appear that they were targeting, the person was targeting that ICE van with the detainees, and the detainees were the target. And again, right now, we just don't know the motive. Was he shooting to hit the detainees, or was he shooting in there to hit any of the potential law enforcement that was also inside that van?
How long could it take before, how many questions need to be answered before you reach a motive?
Well, a lot, Cynthia. They're going right now through every single aspect of this suspect's life. Their social media, interviewing family, friends. Did they say anything? Were there ever indications? Did anybody try to call law enforcement prior to any of this? Were there any warning signs that somebody could have figured out that he was planning this attack? And it clearly looks like he planned that attack. That wasn't just somebody that randomly picked a rooftop and just started shooting. That person knew what they were doing and what time perhaps those vans were going in and out of that facility.
And Jason, you just touched on how this state is more of a target because of the larger number of detainees. Are these threats becoming more common?
Yeah, Fox News had a report on this with the federal government just in July, at the end of July, and they were estimating at that time that just between January, when President Trump took office, and the end of July, that ICE had seen an increase of almost 700% in assaults on ICE officers. That sounds like a huge percentage, so you do have to qualify that by saying it was just a handful in the year prior, and so that percentage is going to go up really fast if you have some increased incidents there. But it does give you an indication that as this federal government, as ICE has gotten a lot more active and a lot more aggressive in taking people into custody, we have seen also an increase in those number of incidents where people are pushing back and doing things like this as well. But again, here we don't know exactly who this person was targeting. And some of these pictures, like of the bullets, get out there way in front of what the investigation is able to provide us. And so, investigators are going to go through this methodically and determine for sure who exactly this person was targeting.
And Jason, I want to add a little bit to that, because typically, and I have covered a lot of these types of shootings, the FBI usually doesn't release anything. They certainly don't release pictures of any kind of evidence. This is one of the first times that I've actually seen them so early on, very quickly release what is potential evidence. They typically don't say very much at all. They'll just say it's an ongoing investigation, give us some really basic facts and move on. The fact that this was tweeted out so early by the FBI director is very interesting.
And that's caught fire on social media today too, since,
Yeah, and I have to imagine something that you just touched on, the fact that I would imagine detainees are not coming and going at all hours of the day, that the person identified a very specific time when that van would be there.
And these are people that were probably brought in. I was talking to an immigration lawyer earlier on that says these people were probably picked up last night, within the last couple of days. They probably don't even have an immigration attorney yet. These are people that were just being brought in or taken or brought in from a jail somewhere that had been picked up by maybe Collin County or somewhere else. But we do know that it's a very preliminary stage of the detainee process right there.
In the meantime, President Trump issued a statement on Truth Social saying, in part, the brave men and women of ICE are just trying to do their jobs and remove the, quote, worst of the worst criminals out of our country, but they are facing an unprecedented increase in threats, violence, and attacks by deranged radical leftists. A reminder, investigators have not yet released a clear motive, as Rebecca touched on, for the attack, and we also don't know the backgrounds of these detainees.
Governor Abbott released a new statement calling the shooting horrific but refusing to be deterred. He wrote, quote, "We will not let this cowardly attack impede our efforts to secure the border, enforce immigration law, and ensure law and order. The Texas Department of Public Safety and Texas National Guard will continue our work with the Department of Homeland Security and ICE to arrest, detain, and deport any individuals in this country illegally without interruption."
Right now, our team is hearing from more political leaders and also from the former head of LULAC. The League of United Latin American Citizens is the oldest Hispanic civil rights organization in the United States.
The political rhetoric, the use of bigotry and racism and hatred is causing violence.
Coming up tonight at 6, we're going to explore the growing worry within the immigrant community and how this shooting only adds to their fears.
And you'll hear from a witness who hid in her car when shots were fired. For the most up-to-date information on the suspect and the victims, you can access WFAA.com. Our coverage continues after World News Tonight.